Thank you, Congressman Ellison, for joining us and speaking to TC Jew Folk and the Minnesota's community. You mentioned when we met you in D.C. at the AIPAC conference that you were heading to Israel and to the Palestinian territories. And
yeah.
Did you just get back? When did you get back? And let us know what it was like.
Well, you know, today is April 8th, and I got back on April 5th.
Okay.
So we just got back, you know, and I was in Israel, I was in the West Bank, I was in Gaza, and I actually happened to be in Egypt and Saudi Arabia too. So it's sort of a Middle East tour, but it was a very good trip. I didn't really go for the government officials, because a lot of times congressperson goes to the Middle East, they're talking with the, you know, with the people in government. But what I did is I talked with people in civil society. So in particular, you know, in Israel, I met with young political leaders. I met with, you know, groups that work on various civil and human rights issues. I met with some people. It's a group called Peace and Security, which is a think tank of former Israeli military and police officials who think about issues of security and worked on the Geneva proposals. And I also so I also did a little bit of touring. Went to the place where Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was killed in Tel Aviv, and so we ended up having a very nice visit. After that night, I had dinner in Ramallah with some folks who, one of them was the mayor of Hebron, and another one was a Coca-Cola bottler, and was doing business there, and the other one was in the financial services sector. So we're just talking about just business on the West Bank and employment and stuff like that. So that's kind of how it looked. And then, of course, you know, I was there a night, 2 days in Gaza, and there was actually Israel was doing some military strikes in Gaza on the day before I was going to go into Gaza. So, you know, for my own safety, I guess they said, you know, we're not going to let you through there. But I did go around and got in through the Rafah gates, and it was safe. It was that, you know, thank God, you know, that day was a day where everything was fine, and you know, had some interesting meetings there. I went to a school, for one school for boys, another school for girls. Talked to those kids there. Talked to some business people. Checked in on a child who you know, was having some difficulty getting out of Gaza for medical treatment. Went to meet with some more human rights people in Gaza. Met with so I just had I had a good trip. Learned a lot. You know what I mean? Learned a lot, and so there you go.
Now, this wasn't the first time that you've been. You've been a few different times to the region? Or?
Yeah, I've been. That was my 5th trip to Israel and 5th trip to the Palestinian areas in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. And 5th time to, obviously, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem. I had been throughout Israel before. One trip I went to Kiryat Shimona, went to the Negev, went to several cities, you know, in Israel. And so this is my 2nd trip to Gaza and my 2nd trip to Egypt. And so, yeah, I've been to the region. I feel like I'm starting to know a little bit about it.
Do you feel like there's anything that was surprising that you learned in this trip that was new to you?
Not really, but I learned other things that I had already had a glimpse of much better. You know, for example, I never sat down and just really listened to a group of Israeli young political leaders, all under 30, who just were sort of talking about, you know, how they see their country, the future, the aspirations, the fears, the hopes, the dreams, kind of stuff like that. You know, these guys were in a group of labor, Meretz, one Kadima, so they weren't the full political spectrum, you know. But it was just interesting to talk to them and hear to them, because I had never really sat down and talked to young political leaders. Only one of them was an elective office holder. They all were elected within the party, but only one was a city council member in Tel Aviv. So that was an interesting conversation. The thing that struck me is how, I don't know, you know, it's always whenever you go abroad, you notice 2 things: that everybody's around the world is the same, and everybody's just a little bit different based on their culture. And the thing that struck me is how familiar they were, in terms of, they're all serious, you could meet a group in the United States would be like them, not that the whole sample is as political as the population, I'm sure not every young person in Israel is political as this group. And of course, if you were talking to young political leaders in America, they'd be more focused on what they're doing than a random sampling of Americans. But they were refreshing, and they also were telling me, some of the things that they thought were important challenges, and so, it was it wasn't something that I was completely unaware of, but to hear it from their perspective was good.